Hey there, with this video I'm going to talk about the top myths about venturing. There's a lot of myths that have built up over time, and several of them existed when I was a youth, and those were a barrier to me starting an Explorer post when I was a kid. But they're still around today, so let's talk about them. Myth one is, and by the way, this is probably the number one killer myth about venturing. Myth one: venturing isn't traditional. Not true. Absolutely not true. And why people cling to this myth is it is a key way that it's a key myth that people use to justify trapping high schoolers in the middle school program, because they couch this as saying that, oh, well, we're just giving high schoolers a choice between the traditional program and venturing. That is not true. It's false for two reasons. First of all, senior scouting, really venturing is the current iteration of programs for senior scouts, a.k.a. high schoolers, and that derives from 1912. The first senior scout program was Sea Scouting. So, hey, guess when the middle school program was started? 1907. Sea Scouting started in 1912. Sorry, they're just as traditional. And the other thing about traditional is people say, well, but the way that we do Scouts BSA is traditional. No, it's not. The way that we do Scouts BA is not traditional. It's an anomaly. The way that the equivalent to our middle school program is done in the rest of the world does it in a traditional way. We do not. We don't use the patrol method. We lard it up with a bureaucracy. And one of the most non-traditional ways we do Scouts BSA is we try to make it a program that speaks to middle schoolers or high schoolers, and in doing so does poorly to both. Another myth about the traditional myth is that the venturing doesn't do the patrol method. In fact, venturing does the patrol method better than Scouts BSA. The patrol method is not the youth bureaucracy. It's not the senior patrol leader and all these titled roles and whatever. That is a USA specific distortion. That is not the patrol method. The patrol method is just the team and the patrol leader. That's it. Well, that's structurally all it is, along with a focus on enabling the leader of that patrol as a CEO of the patrol, not undermining the patrol leader as a middle manager or something. Anyway, venturing does the patrol method better than Scouts BSA because it emphasizes the team, it emphasizes that youth leader of that small team, and it also allows the dynamic creation of patrols as needed for certain tasks. So anyway, I'm wandering a little bit. Let's get back to the main thing. The myth is that venturing is somehow not traditional and we got to allow Scouts BSA as a traditional option. No, that is completely phony. Venturing and its application of the patrol method, etc., is just as traditional as Scouts BSA. In fact, is more traditional because it's actually putting high schoolers in their own program, not trying to dilute a middle school program to somehow also poorly meet the needs of high schoolers. Okay, the second myth is that you got to be in a troop to do Star Life Eagle. Also not true. Now, you do need to be in a troop to do everything through first class. That is accurate, but you do not need to be in a troop to do Star Life and Eagle. You can completely disconnect from a troop, not set a foot in a middle school meeting ever again, and do Star Life Eagle completely through a crew. And in my crew, I have one kid who did that, and I have two more kids who are currently working on it, and possibly a third or fourth who may start it. And I'll just be frank, you should move to venturing to do Star Life and Eagle. Why? Because you're going to get actual leadership experience in a crew. Scouts BSA is a youth bureaucracy. It is not a leadership organization. In Scouts BSA, what people call leadership is just bureaucrats running a babysitting ring. And running as in operating. They're not leading. Leadership is about visions and voluntary followers and motivation. That's not what Scouts BSA is about. It's about titled roles. It's a corporate bureaucracy simulation. It's not about leadership. So anyway, yeah, myth two is that you can't do Star Life and Eagle in a crew. You can. And hey, if you want to, totally optional, but if you want to, you can also do the Trail to Summit. Totally fine. You could do the Ranger Award. Totally fine. And you cannot do them. Totally fine. It's your choice. Myth three is that venturing crews are focused on high adventure. That is nonsense. And that was a barrier when I was a kid also. Ventures do not have to do a lick of high adventure if they don't want to. And I'll just give some inside baseball in my own crew. My crew really bought into doing a Philmont trip this summer, and I really supported them in it, and I said, hey, let's go for it. That is likely the first true high adventure my crew has done since 2018. And in retrospect, that may have been a mistake because of my crew, where I have almost 20 members. I only have 2 that are going. I had to merge with a different group out of Florida to make it viable. So it's a long story, but it may have been an actual mistake in retrospect for my crew to get on with a high adventure trip. There's just a lot of reasons why it didn't align with my crew. But back to the main thing, you do not have to do high adventure in venturing. It is perfectly fine if a venturing crew looks like it is doing mostly the same activities that a scout troop would do. That's perfectly fine, perfectly acceptable, a normal program. Totally fine. The difference, though, is that these activities will be done in the context of the sensibilities and maturity of high schoolers. We're not having to accommodate the sensibilities of 6th graders. We're letting high schoolers be their authentic selves. It's okay. The 4th myth is that venturing crews need to have some kind of specialty. They do not. They do not need to have a focus. And in fact, in my own area, I feel that, I don't know what the true count is, but it feels like fewer than 15% of the crews in my broader area have any kind of specialty. Like, there's a crew near me that specializes on horses, and another one that specializes on ATVs, and that's fine. It's totally fine if that is your interest, but it is not a requirement. In my experience, few crews focus on a specific specialty. You don't have to. You could be general interest scouting. Again, venturing is just the scouting, all the norms of scouting applied in a manner that is appropriate for high schoolers. That's all it is. There is no requirement to have a specialty. So I hope dispelling these myths will help you with your decision making. My view is that all high schoolers should be in venturing. They do not need to be in the middle school program. It's a ridiculous tradition in BSA, but when I say tradition, is a tradition specific to BSA. Otherwise, we are an outlier with the rest of the world, because the rest of the world provides age-differentiated programming. They do not cram middle schoolers into a high school program. We are an outlier in our own society. For example, our educational system does not force high schoolers to be in a middle school program. Like, when's the last time you heard of an 11th grader going back to middle school, going back to take 8th grade courses? You don't, because it's stupid. We're the only ones doing that. It's an outlier within extracurriculars in the USA. How often have you heard of an 11th grader on a 6th grade debate team or on a 6th grade soccer team? You haven't, because it's stupid. They don't do that. And finally, it's an outlier with the research record. The research does not affirm that it is healthy for middle schoolers or for high schoolers to have to be in a middle school program and pretend to be peers to the middle schoolers. It's absurd. And one note on that, high schoolers lingering in a middle school program running a babysitting operation is not mentoring. It is simply high schoolers being bureaucrats and being unpaid babysitters. That's all it is. Why do I say that? Because mentoring can be healthy, done in narrow circumstances. But that's not what we are doing in Scouts BSA. We are forcing high schoolers to be peers. I remember when my high schoolers would show up to the PLC meetings, they just detested it. They don't want to pretend to be peers to the 6th graders. It's stupid, and they hated it, and they showed it. The only high schoolers who really appreciate that are the immature ones. And frankly, the immature high schoolers are being undermined and held back by being denied peer-level experiences. Immature high schoolers need to move on to high school, as they do in the rest of the world. They need to stop being coddled and allowed to pretend to be peers to the middle schoolers. But I'm wondering, the point is that there is room for mentoring, but that does not replace age-level programming. So under my vision, a venturer who wishes to also help with a troop is invited to do so as a guide. And that is my proposal for a new role that would allow any youth from any program to assist with a program designed for younger youth. The guide does not replace age-level programming. It does not displace it. It is simply an additional opportunity for those who are interested in it. But younger programs in no way depend on the presence of older youth to succeed. That is also a myth. So anyway, get your high schoolers into a high school program. That is venturing. Get them out of the middle school program. By being in the middle school program, they are being undermined, and they are actually undermining the middle schoolers because they are denying middle schoolers the opportunity to own their own programming. Venturing is the high school program. That is where all BSA high schoolers need to be.